This week on the Hollywood and Toto podcast, we laugh at Jimmy Kimmel for the most extreme example of gaslighting you may ever see. We talk to the director of a new documentary that's tied to the fentanyl crisis. Why Hollywood isn't making a movie like this, I don't know, but Steffan Tubbs did. It is amazing. It's a must see. And we're going to find out much more about it in a minute. And since I'm always on the lookout for a great comedy, they don't make them anymore. I found a 2012 comedy that was very funny, very sharp, pokes fun at hippie culture, but isn't mean-spirited. There's a lot of good things in this one. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Hollywood and Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Now, before we begin, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to the Hollywood and Toto podcast. You can do it on YouTube, Rumble, iTunes, whatever your favorite audio podcast provider is, anywhere. Every little bit helps, and we appreciate it. I don't think this is breaking news, but Jimmy Kimmel's probably going to vote for President Biden come fall. Now, again, I'm going out on a limb here, but the late night host is aggressively left of center. He has become much more progressive in recent years. We've seen that transformation in front of our eyes. And most recently, he decided to make it official. He joined President Biden at a fundraiser in Hollywood. I mean, how much more official can it get? That's as extreme as you could possibly imagine. Of course, for a while now, all he's been doing is giving in-kind contributions to Team Biden on his ABC platform. Now he's gone above and beyond, but turns out that wasn't enough. He wasn't on Team Biden sufficiently, it turns out. He could do more, and he did more, and boy, is it embarrassing. Now, as we all probably know, President Biden looked a bit frozen at the end of that fundraiser. Many of us have seen the video. It's not a deep fake, nor is it a cheap fake. It's the real deal. President Biden just froze at the end of the ceremony, just stood there, maybe 6 seconds, maybe 7 seconds. And then at the end of it, President Obama, who was on hand, came over, kind of startled him a bit, and led him off the stage. Actually had his hand on President Biden's back as if he knew if he let go, who knows where the wanderer-in-chief would head. Now, we saw that. The White House tried to spin that. And listen, that's what the White House does. It's what the Democrats do. I understand that. It makes perfect sense. It's laughable. It's ridiculous, but it makes perfect sense. What doesn't make perfect sense is Jimmy Kimmel, who again was there, went on his show to say, oh no, you think your eyes are telling you the truth? No, it's me. I tell you the truth. I'm the one, not your senses. Let me explain.
There's a clip of Joe Biden going around today, and they say he froze and had to be escorted off stage on Saturday night. I was standing right next to him when it happened. He didn't freeze. He was just listening to the people calling him in the front row. But the right-wing media, while working very hard to claim Biden's out of it, somehow seemed to completely miss moments like this.
I think he should take a cognitive test like I did. I took a cognitive test, and I aced it. Dr. Ronnie Johnson, does everyone know Ronnie Johnson, congressman from Texas? He was the White House doctor.
Yeah, his name's Ronnie Jackson. It's not Ronnie Johnson. It's Jackson. If that was another cognitive test, you failed it, okay?
And that's what he did. He explained it away. Jimmy Kimmel was there. He knows what happened. He knows what we've all seen. We know the video in question was not a deepfake, was not edited, was actually taken by a reporter from the Hollywood Reporter, no conservative bastion, and yet he lied to us. He just flat out lied to us. Something clearly is deeply wrong with President Biden. That's not partisan. That's not my conservative side coming to the fore. It just is. I'm sorry. And in many contexts, this would be sad. He's 81. He's led a pretty remarkable life in many ways, agree or disagree. It's time for him to go home with his family and to enjoy his last few years. That's just the aging process. That's just what we all go through. But the Democrats are saying, oh no, he's fit as a fiddle and he can run for 4 more years. It's absurd, but we need a comedian to say, hey, that's absurd. So not only is Jimmy Kimmel unwilling to do that, he's doing the opposite. He's joining the he's just fine, you're crazy chorus. It's a pretty loud chorus. It includes the mainstream media, which is, I have to say, every few weeks, I think, can the mainstream media get worse? And then I say, oh, yeah, they can. And they're doing it right now. Can't even imagine how they'll be topping that come September, October, and of course, early November. But here's the bottom line. Jimmy Kimmel is a comedian. He's a satirist. He works the late night room. That's a pretty cool gig. He's been doing it for years. And you know what? At the end of the day, he's a funny guy. He's got a track record of doing humorous stuff from The Man Show up until today. He's not a hack per se, at least not on paper. But when you decide to become a propagandist and not a comedian, when you go all in on a candidate, you lose credibility. When you tell people that they can't trust their own eyes, you lose all remaining credibility. And that's where we are with Jimmy Kimmel. From The Man Show to this. What a sad decline. My next guest has something in common with this show. This show shares news and perspectives you don't see in many other places. Hollywood in Toto, my website, covers story after story that is being ignored in the press. Steffan Tubbs, longtime radio personality, news anchor, now a filmmaker, is making movies that should be made by the mainstream, but they're not. His new project is called Devastated. It's a look at the fentanyl crisis, which is just out of control, which is as scary as anything going on in the culture right now. He's doing it from a Colorado perspective. He's based in Colorado. That's his home. I believe he's from San Diego originally. But the bottom line is that this is happening everywhere in the country. But by focusing on one state, he makes it a little bit more specific. But these are stories we can all relate to. And it's horrifying, truly horrifying.
So here in Denver, we do about 1,000 autopsies a year. 2/3 at least involve fentanyl plus or minus other drugs.
It's one try and die, one pill and die, one line and die. It's Russian roulette with 6 bullets in the chamber.
It's not a red or a blue issue, it's a red, white, and blue issue. All Americans are being impacted.
I lost my 14-year-old son, Alexander, to fentanyl poisoning.
My daughter, Allie, she was always looking for the next thing she could conquer.
She will forever be missed. She's with us, she's everywhere, and she'll never leave here, so.
I was so happy to have Steffan on the show. We discussed the making of the movie, why he's made it available for free right now. You don't have to pay for it. You can just go to YouTube or go to devastatedco.com to find out more information and to watch the film as well. And also, let's talk about the media. Steffan and I talk about that at length in this conversation. Now, he is a creature of the media. Again, he anchored in Denver radio for many, many years. He was a talk show host as well. He's moved on from those gigs. He understands how the media works. And let me tell you, this movie is trying very, very hard to be apolitical. But, you know, at the end of the day, there are politics really baked into the fentanyl crisis. And that you just can't avoid. So I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Steffan. Really smart fellow, a good filmmaker, and God bless him for making this movie. It matters, and you'll soon see why. Well, Steffan, thanks for joining the show. You know, the fentanyl crisis is everywhere. It's hard to escape it. And you're a news person at heart, so obviously this has been top of mind. But how does it go from top of mind to this is the subject of my next documentary? This is something I can't avoid any longer. Talk a little bit about that process, how this began.
Yeah, Christian, thank you for having me. Look, with the way in which the fentanyl epidemic is impacting this country, the deadliest drug threat that the country has ever faced, you really cannot be paying attention to the news and not know about the fentanyl crisis. Mm-hmm. This really kind of for the last couple of years has been kicked around in my mind. Then a little more than a year ago, we were able to secure financial backing so I could pay my folks to do the great work that they have done. But it's such an important issue. You know, this could be taken to a national or international level. But we decided, let's focus on Colorado. Let's see the impact that it's having. And of course, we only get to hear from maybe a dozen families, but in the interviews with those families, I can tell you to an individual and not collective, individually, they would tell me when I'd ask them, you know, why are you willing to speak about this? It's because they don't want their grief to ever be experienced by anyone else, whether they're in Colorado or any other place on the planet.
I imagine there's probably 1,000 answers to this next question, but you go in knowing certain things about the crisis. You expect to hear certain horror stories, but along the way, you hear more and more, you learn more and more. Certain data points just come up and they're shocking. Can you recall any specific examples of things that just stun you along the production process?
Boy, that is a tough one, because so many steps along the way, I would be left speechless. I know that sounds kind of corny, but I would talk with these family members. I think, you know, really in no particular order. The one thing that I continue to be in awe about, and we continue, you know, every day I hear a comment or somebody sends an email or in conversation, it may come up. The fact that these families in Colorado took the time to speak with a complete stranger. I knew a couple of these individuals in Devastated, but not to a point of, let's sit down with a camera crew and lighting, let's rearrange your living room and tell me about the most devastating moment of your life. So I was very sensitive to that, but I was always amazed at how these people were sharing their worst moments of losing a loved one in hopes of preventing another family from going through that. When it comes to almost the brass tacks, the amount of fentanyl that we would come to find out that was seized in a particular calendar year, or the busts here in the state of Colorado, or the amount of fentanyl cases that medical examiners or coroners were handling across even rural parts of Colorado. I think those are probably the top three that come to mind when it really comes to what stunned us. I mean, in the film, the Denver medical examiner says, you know, his office is handling 1 to 2 fentanyl related death cases every day. I mean, that certainly has stuck with me.
Yeah. You know, I don't think this film exists or is necessary. Maybe this is, maybe I'm being too cold and callous to the media. If the media did its job, if they held politicians accountable, if they kept this as a drumbeat, much like a salacious story, a political story, it just seems like this should be the media's job to really cover this extensively. Is that a fair critique?
I think it's more than fair. I was a newsman for 34 years, and I'll always, to me, be someone who is in tune, at least I hope, with the news cycles. You know, someone pointed this out to me a couple of weeks ago, and I stopped to think, well, that's kind of pithy, but then, you know, for sake of our conversation, I'll bring it up. And they said, you know, what if a network, or in this case, you know, local media, what if they had a fentanyl death counter on their screens, a la what we saw during COVID?
Yeah.
I thought at first, oh man, that would be so morbid. No one would do it. Well, I don't think anybody would do it. But Christian, you know as well as anybody, and I appreciate so much your support of this film. But, you know, when we're talking about these cases, and we're talking about, you know, 100,000 plus Americans are dying every year from drug overdose. I prefer to call it drug poisonings. If we had something like that, and the media would focus on that, I don't think it would ever go away. I don't think this problem's never going to go away. You can't arrest yourself out of it. You can't prosecute yourself out of it. But if you can save your own family, if you can save a loved one by having a conversation, and maybe that conversation is triggered by media coverage, I think the media could do a heck of a lot more.
Yeah, after I watched your film, I talked to my sons at least twice, if not 3 times, to the point where they're saying, "Okay, Dad, I got it," because they're in that target age. They're in their teenage years. You're a right of center person, generically speaking, and a news person. And I can tell when I'm watching Devastated that you're trying not to make a political film. You're trying to keep it straight and narrow. But I think politics can't help but enter the frame. Right. And I also think the reason why a film like this is necessary is because there is a political component. I know you want to tread carefully here, but I can't not address it, and I can't not ask it. Talk about the intersection of this crisis and politics, because I think it's inescapable, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, to anyone doing this type of film, good luck in trying not to get politics involved. I mean, the fact of the matter is, first of all, thank you. I have tried and tried my best with my team since the inception of the idea to put Devastated together, that we cannot have this film be all of one particular thing. It cannot be, however long it would be. It ended up being nearly 90 minutes long. It can't be all grieving parents. It can't be all drug abusers. It cannot be focused simply on drug cartels. So we tried to take this very wide scope of how we got here with individual stories. And, the stories speak for themselves. These folks are truly amazing. They truly are heroes of mine. But when it comes to politics, I'll say what one of our interview subjects had said. And that is, it was Mike Lynch, who is a member of the Colorado House of Representatives. He says, look, you can look at it a million different ways, but there's only one real thing that comes into focus. I'm summarizing. And he says, there's been only one party in dominant power in Colorado for many, many years. And, we in the film, as you know, we go back to 2018, 2019, and we start to see where everyone's talking about fentanyl because you can't escape it. And then they start to make legislation or proposals. They go into their committees, et cetera. Things are killed in committee. Things are presented one way on the floor of the House. And then with appropriations and different language, things are changed. They're watered down. In my opinion, and I know you didn't ask, but in my opinion, it's the lack of law enforcement in Colorado, not law enforcers, but it's, if there's no teeth to any laws, if we're looking at it generally as, well, the drug dealers are kind of victims too, as long as we have those types of attitudes and the not tough on crime in any state, whether it's Colorado or New Hampshire, we're not going to see much change. And unfortunately, the tragedy is going to continue.
I've been covering films in the last year or two, documentaries that were extraordinarily powerful. Devastated is one such film. The Fall of Minneapolis is another, and even Screams Before Silence, which is about October 7th, and the survivors are speaking out about what they experienced. And I noticed that I'm one of the few critics in the country covering them, reviewing them, giving them promotion. I mean, I call it promotion. It's just interviewing filmmakers and or critiquing them. That's promotion of sorts. It's kind of part of the game. What's going on here? I mean, it's one thing if the media doesn't really dig their heels into the story and doesn't hold the politicians accountable, or at least make them, face the issue. Why isn't the media even covering it? And I don't think I've seen a lot of coverage of your film in traditional media, or maybe I'm wrong. You tell me, how has the media treated your film? It's a few weeks old now.
First, thank you for what you do. I know, this is our 10th documentary film. I appreciate any coverage that any of our films get. Primarily, I was dealing with World War II veteran related documentaries, and I'm very proud of those. But this one really is the first to tackle a today issue. And I don't know why the mainstream media. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like sour grapes because I've been very happy. I mean, as we record this, we've had over 360,000 views on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I joked with the off the air. I mean, I'm not a Kardashian, so I'll take those numbers, right?
Yeah.
But let me come back to the Kardashian thing in a moment and remind me if I forget, because I think it's a valid point.
Yeah.
But to your question as to whether or not this is receiving media attention, you know, I don't know. I don't know what it is like in a television newsroom or a radio newsroom now when it comes to the fentanyl topic. I know that the story is being covered, but are we really getting into the nuts and bolts of more than the reactionary cops seized 50,000 fentanyl pills today? Are we really looking at it from a bigger perspective? When it comes to individual film projects, I don't know why, you know, for example, here in the Denver area, why this film hasn't received at least 2 minutes of attention on every single station, regardless of if they're left leaning or right leaning or trying to be down the middle. I don't have that answer.
Yeah.
But I will say, back to the Kardashian example, one of the amazing individuals in Devastated, and you'll remember him because he's got a very thick Jersey, New York accent. He's a former special operations guy for the DEA, Derek Maltz. And he, I mean, probably sometime today, he has been on social media wondering why key players on social media aren't talking about the fentanyl crisis. And, you know, to your point of why we're not getting attention, whether it's my film or just fentanyl issues in general, you know, a tweet can go around the world, as you know, the right type of way, probably in less than 10 minutes. If the right people were talking about this issue, I think we would make a lot more headway. And as maybe Pollyanna as it sounds, I think if you had the right people, athletes, entertainers, sports figures, like I said, just influencers in general, if they would tweet out about an individual that died that maybe they know, I think we would make more. I don't know why. I don't know why that the fentanyl crisis in the United States has not received more attention. And it's frankly unfortunate, because if a Taylor Swift or a Peyton Manning, you know, if they tweeted about this or talked about this, I think a lot more people would pay attention.
It's a great point, and something I've brought up a lot. You know, I'm very critical of Hollywood at times, but, you know, some stars, when they bring up certain issues, Michael J. Fox with Parkinson's, for example, they could change the culture for the better. They could bring awareness. And Mark Duplass is a very good actor, writer, director, producer, and he's been sharing his journey through his mental health struggles on Instagram. And it's powerful, and it's open, and it's honest, and it's raw. And if someone with some cachet, like you mentioned, I guess Kardashian's the ultimate example, but just anyone who has that reach would do something like this, it would have a powerful impact. I was curious about the fact that this movie is free. You can watch it right now on YouTube. And, you know, and I know that documentaries aren't cheap, and I know that your time is valuable. You're a professional. How did you square that? How did you make that happen? Because in a way, you know, it's certainly a selfless act. I know your heart's in the right place, but it's not easy doing that.
I mean,
can you share a little bit of how that happened? Yeah,
this film would not be possible without a Colorado rancher, Steve Wells. He was in when I had my old radio talk show. He was in as a guest, and I believe in, you know, opportunity. You gotta take the opportunity. You gotta strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. And I had about a 3-minute end of the hour before the next hour started, and Steve was leaving the studio, and I mentioned to him about an idea about the fentanyl crisis in Colorado, and within 24 hours, he had. To be honest, it was 18 hours and 3 minutes. I know exactly that because, you know, this was not a Hollywood production budget, but it wasn't, you know, $20 and thank you very much.
Yeah.
But I had to pay my team. They have mortgages and families to support. But with Steve Wells' support, we were able to take it to that next level. I'm confident in saying this is the best documentary that we have done as the Mountain Time Media team. but I'll tell you, the thing that I'll remember is something that I actually did not find out. Steve Wells agrees to fund the film, but I did not find out for Christian. It had to be 6-8 months later. I mean, we're well into interviews and production. Mm-hmm. And Steve said to me, just kind of off the cuff in a conversation, he said, you know, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this film and I wanted to give you the ability to do it is because my best friend's son died of fentanyl poisoning. And this, to me, I kind of was taken aback just because that seems like something that he would have told me in that first 24-hour window. But I would find out months and months later. And as you know, without financing, it's very hard to do things. My first few films that we did, you know, I begged, borrowed, I called in old favors. But with this one, I'm confident that Mr. Wells' money has been well spent. And I know that from the reactions just on YouTube, you know, this has been seen around the world already. And the one thing, back to your initial point, I told the team from the absolute beginning, this must be available in as many avenues as possible. And it absolutely must be free. No paywall, no special password or code or anything like that, because you just never know who's going to see your film. And I'm confident, though I may never find out concrete evidence-wise, I'm confident that this film devastated on the fentanyl crisis, specifically on Colorado, but you could interchange Colorado's fentanyl disaster with any other state in the country. I'm confident, even if we don't have hard proof now or into the future, that it will save a life. And that's because I know it'll get people talking. And, you know, you're a perfect example. Mm-hmm. If you in your conversations with your kids, or me with the conversations I've had with my young kids who are young adults, you just never know. But I'm confident that it'll have a positive impact in at least getting people to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't support it more. I couldn't want to promote it more. It's an important film, and I think that's a word that's bandied about all too glibly in Hollywood and with projects like this, but this one really does count. The film is Devastated. You can go to devastatedco.com. Of course, that's Colorado. And also just search it out on YouTube. You'll find it there. You'll watch it there. You'll tell friends, because I can't imagine you see this film and not have some sort of visceral reaction. And by golly, let's not have it where we have to be aware of the problem because it touches our lives directly or even indirectly. That's how that person, you know, was sparked by this project. Let's not go there. Let's find some solutions. Let's hold the politicians accountable on both parties. And just couldn't be happier that you did this. It's something that more outlets should be covering. But you know, the word's getting out. People are seeing it, and I think that that movement will continue. Steffan, thanks so much for joining the show, and I'm looking forward to other projects, maybe lighter projects, maybe different directions. But yeah, I'm so happy you made it Devastated.
Christian, thank you so much for your support, my friend, and thank you again.
My son Eli has a hard and fast rule when it comes to watching movies with his dad. It's simple: comedy or horror. That's it. Now, I'm frustrated by this. I want him to watch wonderful dramas like The Shawshank Redemption, films like The Graduate, things like that, meaty films. He's 15. He should be watching things that educate him and expand his horizons. But for now, time is tight. He's a stubborn little guy. So we watch comedy or horror. So when it comes to comedy, we've seen a lot of the basics, the classics, but I'm always on the lookout for something new and different and things that maybe even I haven't seen or maybe watched a while ago, but didn't really appreciate. And that's why Wanderlust is a subject of conversation right now. It came out in 2012. It had a really good cast. Jennifer Aniston, Paul Rudd among them. A lot of the familiar faces from other films you've seen in recent years. So that's important as well. But it's genuinely funny. It's smart. It's wise. It's warm. And I love the fact that it's poking fun at hippie culture, which I'm no huge fan of, but it's not doing it in a mean-spirited way.
You ready for your meeting?
Yep.
Knock him dead, all right? I'll call you later. You know what I want to do? I want to take off that robe and...
Why are you not at work, George?
Oh, no, I forgot fired. As soon as we can get back on our feet, we'll come back to New York. But right now, my brother's offering me a job, and Atlanta's the best place for us to be.
Hey, there he is, my homeless brother. Where's your cardboard box? And Linda, oh my God. Your body is redonkulous.
Rick, I think you're making everybody uncomfortable.
Oh, everybody knows what I mean.
The story follows Rudd and Anis. They play a happily married couple, no kids, and they're having some financial woes, and they happen to stumble across a place called Elysium, and it's a hippie compound, for lack of a better phrase. And because times are tight, because Rudd's brother is such a jerk, played beautifully by Ken Marino, by the way, great performance, they decide to stay a little while, and they find the hippie lifestyle kind of endearing. There's sweetness, there's a shared sense of responsibility. The land is beautiful. The characters are compelling and colorful. This might just be their oasis. Who knows? That's the story. That's the setup. Now, you've got a lot of familiar faces here. Like I said, Ken Marino is great. Joe Lo Truglio, so good on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, forgive me, I almost added an extra 9 there, is wonderful again. He's playing a nudist, an author, a winemaker. And he's got a prosthetic in the film, which, well, it earned the R rating in and of itself. Jordan Peele is here. Just wonderful performances all across the board. But again, it's very funny. It's very unique. You don't see a lot of films like this. This is not cookie cutter storytelling. But I also love the way that they capture the main romance here. There's a scene early on where Rudd and Aniston are fighting with each other, and they're on a road trip. And they're fighting and they're bickering and they're singing along to the songs on the car radio, and they're fighting and they're sniping at each other. And it's beautifully edited, chop, 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 in a way that makes it even funnier. I just thought, wow, how did this movie go kind of fly by all our radar? It didn't make a lot of money at the box office. I don't think the reviews were particularly kind, but sometimes comedy doesn't age well, and sometimes it ages much better than expected. That's the case with Wanderlust. It's available on Netflix right now. I definitely recommend it. A wonderful cast, big laughs, heartfelt humor, even has Alan Alda in a significant role. What's wrong with that? Nothing. Wanderlust on Netflix right now. Do check it out. And if you like it, or even if you don't, maybe just drop me a note, a tweet on Twitter. I'm at Hollywood in Toto, of course, or you can email me, Christian@hollywoodintoto.com. Would love your feedback on this one. I really enjoyed it. I think you will too. Nothing like a sleeper comedy. And again, hey, Hollywood, can you make more movies like this? We need them now more than ever, truly. Well, that's it for the show this week. Thank you to Radio America for having me as part of their great podcast lineup. Thank you to Steffan Tubbs for making Devastated and being a part of this new documentary revolution. It is really essential. So many good films coming our way outside the Hollywood ecosystem. Shame on them, but I'm so grateful there are filmmakers out there telling these stories. They do matter. And of course, if you have a chance, you can go over to iTunes, give us a 5-star rating. You could check out hollywoodintoto.com. That is my website. Like the show, it is the right take on entertainment, updated 7 days a week. Hope you enjoy the show and the site as well. And again, I appreciate your time. And because I'm new to the YouTube revolution, like and subscribe, smash that like button, pound it, eviscerate it, put a nuclear bomb atop it. Whatever you need to do to that like button, make it happen. I think that helps. I'm not really sure. Again, I'm learning. It's an education for me and you as well, I imagine. But thank you for watching the show. Thank you for checking it out. And I will see you next time.